Welcome. I'm Terry Kramer, Faculty Director of the Easton Technology Management Center at UCLA Anderson. And I wanted to welcome you to this special program, which I hope you find is going to be fascinating and timely, on cybersecurity, risks, opportunities, and areas of promising innovation. This program is going to be developed and executed by both UCLA Anderson and Tel Aviv University. Now, as the world becomes much more connected to the internet, cybersecurity is becoming a critical issue that affects just about everyone: individuals, enterprises, and governments. Private data, intellectual property, cyber infrastructure, military, and national security can all be compromised by cybersecurity challenges that come in a variety of forms, including ransomware, phishing attacks, malware attacks, and more. In the US, cybersecurity challenges are manifest not only through our own computer systems when they go down, but through a variety of broader attacks, such as the 2021 attack to poison the public water supply in Florida, the 2020 cyber attack against SolarWinds, an IT management software company compromising about 100 companies, including Microsoft, Intel, and Cisco. And most recently, the Colonial Pipeline, where a cyber attack shut down 5,500 miles of pipeline that carries 45% of the US East Coast fuel supply after being hit by a ransomware attack. We at UCLA were also a victim of a UC system-wide attack by a ransomware group. Now, to combat these challenges, companies such as Palantir Technologies, whose software has been used to stop terrorist attacks, develop new medicines, gain an edge in global financial markets, and combat child trafficking, are especially important. Palantir offers solutions that help strengthen cybersecurity to a variety of clients, including U.S. civil entities, the U.S. military and intelligence groups, the police, and companies of all types. Now, to combat these cyber attacks, there are a variety of promising underlying technologies to deal with them, including AI and ML. A few of the specific areas of innovation include security orchestration, automation, and response that detects and responds to incidents such as malicious email without direct human intervention. Next generation firewalls offer an advanced version of a traditional firewall that enables faster threat detection, preventing malware from entering a network. And blockchain technology helps enterprises maintain data integrity through decentralization and encryption. Now, we've got a great group of expert panelists here to talk about all these issues, to talk about the risks, to talk about the areas of innovation. Our first panelist is Professor Itzik Ben Israel, who's the director of the Blavatnik Interdisciplinary Cyber Research Center, ICRC, at Tel Aviv University. He's also the chairman of the Israel Space Agency. Prior to that, he served as the Major General at the Israel Air Force and founded Raytop, which consults governments and industries on technology and strategy issues. In 2010, he was appointed by the Israeli Prime Minister to head a task force which initiated the cyber revolution in Israel. And in 2018, he was again appointed by the Israeli Prime Minister to do the same with AI. Our second panelist is Dr. Jacob Mendel. He's a senior lecturer and head of cybersecurity studies at Coller School of Management at Tel Aviv University and head of research cooperation with industries at Blavatnik Interdisciplinary Cyber Research Center, also at Tel Aviv University. He's a serial entrepreneur in cybersecurity. He's been the CEO and co-founder of SC Square, a security software company, and holds 16 approved patents in the area of cybersecurity. Our third panelist is Feuer. He's the CEO of Siemens Industry Software, where he leads global teams and initiatives to develop and service customers worldwide, providing manufacturing engineering software solutions that range from the optimization of production and service facilities, design of assembly lines, to programming of CNC machines in major machine shops. And finally, we've got Yuda Saydun, who's the founder and president of CyVent, where he oversees the delivery of cutting-edge AI-driven cybersecurity solutions that protect some of the world's most sensitive operations. Prior to that, he was an executive at American Express, Tech Data, Climeco, and Xerox. Now, for today's session, I'm going to ask the panelists a series of questions that better frame these issues and better understand their insights. And then we'll use Slido for a moderated Q&A. To submit a question, just go to slido.com, SLIDO.com, and enter in the event code CYBER. Again, the event code is CYBER. And you can either enter your own question or upvote one of the existing ones, and I'll endeavor to pose the most popular questions. So first of all, let me say a big welcome to each of our panelists. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. Let me start with each of you to get your own view about cybersecurity challenges. Where are the areas you're personally most concerned about, whether it's in consumer areas, enterprise areas, areas that affect society, et cetera? Itzik, why don't we start with you?
Well, I would say thank you very much for the introduction and the question. And I would say that what is unique to cybersecurity is that you cannot really isolate one field and say this is the most challenging one. And the reason is very simple. The dominant technology of the 21st century is computer technology, and computers are everywhere. I'm speaking about computer chips, of course, and all we are surrounded by more computer chips than human beings, and every field of our life is dependent upon the proper function of computers. And by doing it, I mean, we developed the computer technology for the benefit of society, but by doing it, we created weakness. We created a way for the bad guys to hurt us and to act not for the benefit of the society, but for their own interest. And therefore, we need to protect ourselves against these bad guys. And you mentioned any field, health, transportation, infrastructure, producing power production, water supply. Any field you mention, we have, we need to have or to solve the cyber problem. And the second challenge, and it's related to the first one, is that computer technology is advancing very fast, much faster than any technology we knew in the past. We have a rule which we call the Moore's Law, after Gordon Moore, who observed already in 1965, and it's still going on today, that every year and a half, the transistors from which we make the computer chips, transistors shrink to half the size, more or less. We can put 2 times more transistors on a certain area, and therefore we double the performance of computation. And therefore, every year and a half, we have a new generation of computer technology, and this is an enormous rate of change. And it's very difficult to follow this. And it's, for example, if we speak about cybersecurity, it's almost impossible to predict what will be the threats, let's say 5 years from now. 5 years from now is 3 generations ahead, and no one can predict 3 generations ahead. 1 generation ahead, if you are lucky, you have luck, maybe. 3 generations ahead, we cannot do it. These are, I think, the most burning challenges, I would say.
Big set of challenges and growing. Jacob, your thoughts on all this?
First of all, again, thank you very much, Terry and the team here organizing this. I think Professor Itzik Ben Israel currently described a very interesting approach about this, and I would like to continue, Itzik, in that direction. The area where I'm focusing now in this domain is specifically on too specific path, but I want to emphasize that every period, the area is changing because the surface of attack has changed, the hacker learned differently, the way the operation, computers, network, all of that are always evolving. So if I'm looking what was the strategy and approach, for example, 4 or 5 years ago, it's different from the approach that we are doing today. The developing life cycle of product has changed. The way that we are defending, if in the past we were assuming that we should protect the perimeter and build fence and have multiple onion layer approach will protect us, we understand today, and you gave very good example, a SolarWinds at the beginning of your talk today, Terry, show you that it will not help you. A hacker will penetrate your organization. Now what happened? And this is exactly the area where I'm currently focusing. Hackers and the penetration will happen. It's not a matter if, it's the matter of when. And for that, I'm looking and focusing on 2 topics, as I said at the beginning. One is privacy preservation. If the attack is happening, and it's assumed it will happen already, how you can protect the privacy of the information that your company, your organization, your institute are holding. And the second topic, during this attack, which will come, maybe tonight, maybe over the weekend, normally they are waiting for a sensitive timing. The second thing is business continuity plan, BCP, to make sure that during the cyber attack, still the organization is able to fully functional. You don't imagine yourself, an organization sent a message, we are not available for the next 48 hours, we need to deal with the cyber attack. Doesn't make sense. You need to continue to deal with the cyber attack in parallel, continuing providing full services to your customer, full business. This is the 2 topics that currently are my main focus.
Good. Jacob, let me just add a follow-on question to you. Is the problem getting bigger, or actually because of the solutions, et cetera, we're able to keep things constant in terms of the threat?
So I think, Terry, this is a very good question. The dependency of the data and our dependency on the web, as Itzik emphasized previously, has just go up. Why? Because of COVID-19. We all, one night, moved to work from home. All what we learned, all the perimeter, all the stuff that we were working in the office in a so-called safe environment, gone in one night. Now, that means from one night to the other, the surface of attack has totally changed, and new vulnerability come available, which in the past was not there. Everybody is now working, not everybody, the majority still continue to work from home, the majority of the world. And assuming that this create now much higher. And we are seeing the numbers. The number increased during the COVID until today, the number increased. We are seeing the value of ransomware charge has increased. We are seeing the number of attack increase. We are seeing more starting into new direction. For example, the US pipeline that you currently described, approaching critical infrastructure. This has an impact already on the oil prices. All of that getting higher. So it's like a sine wave. The peak is higher and coming with a higher frequency. We are seeing more attacks, more damage.
Excellent, very helpful. V, let me go to you. You see a lot of the enterprise kind of world in this. Tell us about the problems you see and again, the magnitude of them.
So I will, first of all, thank you for this opportunity and very happy to be here. I am by no means an expert in cybersecurity, but I do work in the software field for about 35 years. So I want to give you a little bit of my view on this. I'll start with an example. My company is supporting BioNTech, which is the Pfizer partner who produces the vaccination for COVID. Actually, we are supporting 7 out of the 17 companies that are developing vaccinations. and we are doing the production. We're managing the production lines. So just imagine what would happen if we screw up and the software that we provide is proved to be vulnerable for cyber attacks. This keeps me awake at night. And this is not only for COVID vaccination, it goes into food and beverage and runs through automotive and up to the nuclear submarines of the US Navy, which is one of our biggest customers in the US. So how do we write software that is minimizing the vulnerability to cyber attacks? Do we even know to do it? And how do we protect ourselves? So that is one big challenge. The other challenge is how do I educate my teams to make sure that we ourselves in the company, we have a big population of people, we are writing code and we are protecting ourselves in our daily behavior in such a way that we are keeping our software development resources safe. As Dr. Mendel just said, on one hand side, we try to prevent anyone to attack us. On the other, we keep on business continuity for the long run.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Okay, maybe I'll stop here and we will continue later.
Yeah, and V, just give us a little bit more thought about the pace of threat here. Do you see it getting bigger and bigger? Do you feel it's constant in the enterprise environment you see, or something different?
So definitely, like everybody said, it's getting bigger. And we are following very closely what's happening both on the Intel side of cybersecurity within Siemens, but also, look, one of the big things that is happening now to our market is the move to cloud. Everybody is talking about it. The big scalers like Amazon and Azure and Alibaba, they are all offering cloud infrastructure, and we are requested to put our software in the cloud and provide the software as a service. On one hand side, the companies want it because it makes their life easier, it reduces cost of ownership, but on the other side, think about the headache this creates. How much more security do we need to implement to protect the assets of our customers while their most secret treasures are run in the cloud? Think about an automotive company who produces or develops a new car and wants to keep it secret before they launch it, and something happens and we are in the middle of it. So yeah, the threats are getting bigger and bigger as we go. And also, you know, like the colleagues here said, the fact that things are moving so fast in this domain is actually increasing I would say the opportunity for some of these bad guys to go after speed boats and try to penetrate and take ransom or steal secrets. And we have seen all of it happening in the last 2 to 3 years and getting even intensified in the last year of COVID.
Excellent. Very helpful. Yuda, let me go to you and get your view. If you were to look at what is an increasing threat by sector or by geography, and you would have to rank order where are the biggest threats geographically, sector-wise, to the least. What is your general view on that?
I think that overall, it's happening everywhere. Even the Florida water treatment that you mentioned, the attackers were 15 miles away. And so it is happening everywhere. In terms of large origin points, we all know the usual suspects, whether it's China, Iran, and Russia. Interestingly, in the Americas, I was surprised to find out that Brazil is the fifth largest worldwide origin of cyber attacks. For one reason or another, there's lots of smart people who are trying to prove their intellectual abilities, I guess. In the end, and I think all of the participants have pointed at the complexity. Dr. Ben Israel, you mentioned the Mendel law. There's another law by VC Ted Schreiner from Kleiner Perkins. He says that security of a network is inversely proportional to the sum of nodes multiplied by the apps, multiplied by the devices, multiplied by the paths into the network. So it's a huge Rubik's Cube, and it's becoming more sophisticated by the day with the trends that you mentioned, Dr. Mendel. And defenders are overwhelmed, confused. The stack is complex. And it's not unusual for a company to have 50 plus security tools and trying to coordinate, to analyze, to defend has become much more complex. So it is unfortunately increasing, and despite the fact that billions get spent yearly by companies, states, individuals, etc., it is not, let's say, it would not be an exaggeration to say that from the defender's point of view, cybersecurity is broken. And I think that last year, over 2020, spending has increased somewhere around 40–50%, yet we have still all seen the headlines in places that we would think are well defended, and through technologies that at some points in time refer to basic cyber hygiene. So it is a very broad issue, which makes us, how should I say, engaged for the long term to try to find solutions, and we'll get to that a little later. I'll stop here and please.
Good. Let me ask one follow-on question on this, Yuda. You know, in a business strategy parlance, Michael Porter, who did all the work on competitive strategy and SWOT analysis and all that, basically had an argument that said the bigger your profit pool, the more you're going to draw in attackers, competitors in that area.
Yeah.
Is there an analogy here with cybersecurity that the more you have at risk, the more you're going to draw in threats there, unless, similar to Michael Porter, you've got sustainable competitive advantage, unless you've got some moat around the business that can protect it. Does the same thing apply here? And that would give us a mindset as to where the threats are likely to happen?
Sure. And yes, that is definitely a trend. Yet you've seen just not even a month ago that even Apple, who's supposed to be the paragon of security and privacy, got attacked for a third party in Taiwan. And so that's another area. Yet, and yes, there's obviously the bounty is going to be bigger at a large corporation. However, there's also a group of hackers who look at easy targets. So yes, the corporations are great bounties, but also they're likely to have defenses. They're likely to have cybersecurity teams who are monitoring and ready to jump in when they detect something. But also, it's very easy to attack smaller companies, especially when you can go on the dark web and rent 1,000 bots for $20 a day for 24 hours, and then throw out a bunch of attacks, which you can also get on the dark web for very cheap. There's ransomware service providers, there's all sorts of services and products available. And so you launch a bunch of stuff to 1 million endpoints. And if you hit 2 or 3, okay, you get some bounties coming and you can get entertained with that. So I think a parallel to what you're saying, there's also the point that being small is not a guarantee of not being hacked. It's also happening everywhere. In fact, we get we're in Florida, and we get lots of smaller companies. Florida is more SMB, right? We get small companies that get attacked for ransomware, whatever, to get 40K, to get 100K, and then they're frozen. So it's happening everywhere.
Good. Itzik, let me go to you because you see a very broad kind of part of the world and solutions, et cetera. If we were to look at and have to assign a grade to all the different players that are responsible for minimizing cybersecurity, ensuring safety, and whether you include governments in that, businesses in that, innovators, how would you rate the people, all the different players here in dealing with the cyber threats, and who owns the problem at the end of the day?
Well, it's like, as I said, cyber threat is the dark side of computer technology, okay? And now, starting from this, you can ask, how do you prevent those threats, okay? Or, as Jacob said, once you failed, how do you come out of it? How do you overcome the problems that it causes, continuing, et cetera, et cetera. Now, asking the first question is, there is usually when you speak about any type of attack, It may be cyber attack, it may be terrorist attack, physical attack, doesn't matter. Any type of attack, usually the principle is that you cannot really wait for the threat to come to your home and then start dealing with it. Mm-hmm. This is a very general principle. If you can do it, you better go as far as you can and catch the bad guys before they started even developing the capability to hurt you. Now, if you speak about cyberspace now, this is really cannot be done almost by enterprises. I mean, let's say you are a bank now, or a big company, I don't know what, Lockheed Martin or you name it, okay? You can defend your own assets. That is like staying at home and waiting for the threat to come. You cannot go out and catch the bad guys on the other side of the globe, because they are not launching a missile, a physical missile, that goes out of the atmosphere and then land on your head. This is not the case. They are launching some, let's call it cyber missile, okay? A series of bits that are going from one server to another server, most of the way outside your own country even. And then once it enters your country from one server into another server, and you as an enterprise don't own those servers. You're not allowed to wait there and do something to them. It's only the government. It's like the same, what usually states do against armies invasion, okay? You cannot really, only the government can do something to block it. It cannot be done by the enterprises by themselves. And here it's the same. And therefore, it is almost a necessity that the government, only government can do it. Only government can do it. It's almost a necessity that governments will do their part in order to block the threat before it enters your house. I mean, in this case, the computers of your enterprise. And if there will be one weak link here, you are lost. I mean, because the whole, let's speak about the internet, okay? The most popular way to attack whatever you want to attack is going through the internet. Now, the internet was built in purpose. I mean, the internet was designed by DARPA at that time to not to be dependent on certain singular links. You cut a link between two nodes. The internet was built like this, that you can always bypass it through other servers, other computers, which you don't own and you don't have an access to. Mm-hmm. And by its very nature, it is ideal, almost paradise for cyber attacks. Because you cannot say, I cannot really block the whole world because I'm now under attack. Mm-hmm. And if you ask me, there should be a role here for the government. But now comes a huge problem, because usually we don't want the government, any government, speaking about democratic world, of course, to follow, to have access to the traffic of bits running in the network, because this violates our privacy. And if you remember the Snowden affair, this was the issue about. I'm not speaking about this singular event, but the problem was that what was exposed there is that the NSA, for the sake of protecting the security of the United States, read private messages going through the network, okay? Which is not, of American citizens. I'm not speaking now about the enemies. I'm speaking about what is happening. There is no way to protect the network if you don't do it, but it's a huge problem. Mm-hmm. You mentioned at the beginning that modern technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, therefore they are necessary, because those technologies enable us to monitor the traffic in the whole network without going down to the level of content and detect anomalies only by behavior of the uncoded bits without going to the level of content. And this is almost, you should do it if you want to, on one hand, to protect your enterprises, and on the other hand, not to violate the privacy of your own citizens.
Yep. And one follow-on question, Itzik, on this, what is the model? You have to be a bit careful on which governments are looking at what. Is there a multi-stakeholder model for cybersecurity that you advocate, or some other approach?
Well, this is a huge question. At the end of the day, all the stakeholders should take part in the game. Now, the problem is, how do you build the trust? You cannot force them to cooperate with the government. Okay, you should need to build certain trust, because I'll tell you a personal story. Okay, when we established in Israel a national level function for protecting critical infrastructure against cyber attacks, this was 2002. We had a list of what do we mean by critical infrastructure. One of the items in the list was the banking system. Okay, another item was power production. We had no problems with power production, but when we came to the banks and say to them, now the government will take care of protecting your computers, they didn't allow the government, they didn't allow to have access to their computers. It's not because they were not afraid of the threat, but because of normal considerations of privacy, who will deal with us, who will put his money in our bank if the government has an access to this computer. So the question was, how do you gain the trust of the people, of the organization? In this case, it was the banking system, without forcing them to do something. And we had to invent a new model. At the end of the day, all stakeholders are participating in it, but it's not by regulation, law, etc., or something like this. To build trust between everyone. If I tell you that I do something and you think that I will take this information and use it for a different purpose, it will never work. And you have to convince everyone that it's only, and therefore, if I tell you, I go back now to the machine learning technology. If I tell you that it's all done by machines that don't really read your files and data storage, etc., but only detect the anomalies in order to filter out possible malware, malignant software, then trust will be bigger. It's not enough. It shouldn't be an intelligence organization that is in charge of it, because people in democracies, don't ask me why, people don't trust intelligence organizations. They think because I don't know why, but because they are less transparent in a way, okay, to the public. It should be an entirely civilian function that is doing it. It should use those technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the most important thing is, if you have a function like this, the goal of this, the mission of this function, shouldn't be catching the bad guys. It shouldn't be part of law enforcement authorities. Because if you tell them to catch the bad guys, no one will resist the temptation to read the content, okay? Because it's difficult to catch the bad guys without reading who is communicating with whom and why and what. But the mission is not to catch the bad guys, but to clean the network. It's a different mission. You have to detect those series of bits that are carrying malware and clean them out of the system, like a medical doctor. I always give this analogy. Sometimes you have a certain disease, let's say a sex disease, okay? You are ashamed to tell everyone even that you got it because people will ask questions, okay? How do you get it? Still, you go to a medical doctor and you tell him about it, and because you know he is not going to tell everyone about it. It's a different, he's not interested in it. He's gaining nothing from it. His goal in life is to clean your body from, in this case, it's the real viruses, not the virtual viruses of space, of cyberspace. And this is why we trust medical doctors. I will not trust them. Same mechanism should also apply into this arrangement between government, private industries, citizens, you name it.
Excellent. Excellent. Very helpful insights there. Jacob, let me continue on this track that Itzik talked about solutions. From your vantage point, can you give us a few examples of solutions you've seen, companies, ventures, approaches, et cetera, you're most impressed with, and why?
Oh, you're asking tough questions today. The thing here is that it depends. It depends on where we are looking. For example, you know, I'm trying now not to reveal confidential information and not to. So I will give the answer, but be careful, okay? So the thing here is that, for example, when I see a solution that protect privacy in a sense that when we are reading in the background, you know, normally when you launch, a company launch a technology, you know what, Terry, let me stop here. I want to take it back and I want to start answering again from personal experience and a product that we did. Okay? One of the things that we developed a solution where we needed to protect a company IP. And in that IP, we were asked how long it will take the hacker to break it. As Professor Itzik Ben Israel said previously, we cannot know. We can guess. We don't know how long it will take the hacker to break it. We don't know how much effort they will put on it. We know they will put a lot, because the gain will be very big. Now, the point was that after launching the product, we constantly were monitoring the darknet and different communities to see what they are talking about this product and how they are trying to attack it and what type of information they are sharing. Lucky for us, what we saw is the following, is that what we built took the hackers 5.5 years to break it. And the idea behind that was we assume and prepare ourselves that they will be able to crack it. Now, when they will crack it, what we will do is we will, assuming, okay, and it has been proved for 5.5 years, that the system will know to start identify that someone is trying to hack it and now behave differently. And the nice thing that we build inside is that based on location, we act differently if the attack was in US, in Germany, or in Israel. So hackers in US, when they hack it and they were happy that, wow, we were successful, the description of the after attack was different from hackers in Europe that saying, yes, we did successfully, and the description was differently. And the same in Israel. And they were not understanding what is happening. We did it in purpose because we needed to know, according to description, who is hacking where and what. This is something which I think was impressive and innovative around this approach. Another area where I'm seeing stuff very interesting is where companies build an advanced technology for patching their product in the field. One of the sensitive area is Imagine yourself, Terry, I don't know which car you are driving. Let's assume a new Mercedes. Can I assume a new Mercedes?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, whatever you like. I don't know if you like Tesla or Mercedes. But assume you drive now a new Mercedes. Imagine yourself now, Mercedes need to do an update to your UCA equipment in the car. Who is going to touch your car and do the update? Do you go to a garage or do the update? Do you let them connect a laptop that was 200 car before you connected and no one knows what is in this laptop now connected to your new Mercedes to get an update? Or you prefer that Mercedes remotely from Germany will make the update directly to your car? What do you prefer? So I'm always looking about updates because there is no bulletproof. It's as we described previously. You need always to be ready to update your software because the attacks change, you find vulnerabilities in your product, you must patch it. How you patch a car in the field? How you patch an airplane? All of that become very sensitive because in the end of the day, we are talking about human life. Later, we are talking about business. This is the priority. When I'm seeing companies building innovative approach for patching on the field, thinking about all the cyber attacks and able to do the patching correctly, I'm impressed.
Yep. Jacob, one follow-on question on this. Assuming a lot of the solutions are data-oriented or AI and ML, et cetera, if we were to compare this to autonomous vehicles, where with autonomous vehicles, you need lots of data points, you need lots of test miles to be able to accurately power an autonomous vehicle and minimize accidents, et cetera, et cetera. How does that look in cybersecurity? Do we not really have enough data and we're literally where autonomous vehicles were 5 years ago? Or are we ahead of autonomous vehicles and our predictive capability is good in this area?
Prediction in cybersecurity is very difficult because, when I established the cybersecurity team at Intel, honestly, I split the group into two parts because one group was engineering. That means they learn models, they learn flowchart, they learn methodology of building solutions. The other part of the team was hackers, which even didn't graduate high school, but their knowledge, they are creative, they don't have models. They always will find a new way to attack, a new way to penetrate, something that all the engineers, with all the respect, I'm an engineer, my first degree is engineering, will be very difficult for them to think like this. Mm-hmm. So to really build a solution correctly to address your question, you need the mix. From one side, the engineering part of the defense, but also the hackers on the defense side. Only them together will be able to build this. And whatever it's involved, it involves AI, and we called it AI for security and security for AI. Because in the end of the day, the machine learning for cybersecurity and cybersecurity for machine learning, it's a mix which need to work together. Sometimes one is more advanced than the other, but it catch up very quickly. In just a few months, we need to catch up because the moment there is a gap, the attacker will find it. The hacker will find it. I prefer my hacker will find it before the external hacker will find it.
Yep, excellent. Let me ask, we got a lot of audience questions. Let me ask two final questions myself, and then we're going to go to the audience. V, let me go to you. Similar question on areas of innovation here you're most impressed with, whether it's at Siemens or elsewhere. What would you call out as some of the most promising areas of innovation here?
I think business process automation, which is a branch of machine learning, is something that we will see more and more in the domains of cybersecurity. But then another area of innovation that we need to consider is best practices. We don't do enough on best practices, both on the user side as well as on the development side. Mm-hmm. And the third area is protecting open source. a lot of the software today that is written commercially is reliant heavily on open source. And if we can protect open source, because open source is written a bit fluffy. So if we can find ways to identify vulnerabilities in open source and protect these vulnerabilities, I think we have another way to get our solutions in a much better shape.
Yeah, V, say more on the best practices. It's interesting using the term sounds manual. It sounds non-data oriented, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about actually, training, culture, human-to-human exchange in cybersecurity initiatives.
So I'll tell you a story. A few years back, one of the ex-heads of the Israeli Secret Service, the Shin Bet, called me and said that he has a consulting company after he retired, and he was called into VW to do a penetration test. And they were in one of the plants. They gave him a plant, and it was all air-gapped. And he managed to penetrate into the plant within about half an hour and actually played around with some technologies which are related to Siemens. And when I asked him how did he do it, he said, well, I spread a few discon keys at the parking lot where the employees parked their car. And some of them picked it up when they came to the office, they shoved it into their PCs and laptops, and this made the difference. So from a fully air-gapped system, which VW was very proud of, he could penetrate. So best practice is how do you prevent these things from happening? And how do you not only use technology, but also educate your people, your workers, your developers, your engineers to be cautious and aware for cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a big change. I think technology can help, but it cannot solve everything. And whenever we think we have solved something, there is some smart ass guy that is, managing to fix what you think you have solved and still penetrate. So if we don't combine technology with best practices and with education and training, I think we're going to be in a very poor situation.
Good. And V, how big is education and training? I'm just trying to scale it in my mind. Is this a top one or two thing? Or candidly, you're only as good as the weakest link. You got lots of employees. You're never going to be able to get compliance and awareness like you need to. Thus, the technology-based solutions are going to be the future. Well, how do you look at that?
I think we are implementing a learning day per month in my organization. It's not enough, but it's a lot. And we are always offering classes in different domains. Some of these domains are new innovative domains which will help us progress our own products, but also around cybersecurity, protection, behavior, best practices, which I mentioned before, environmental issues. And within these learning days, we allow people to take practically almost a day off and do self-training, but also sometimes we bring experts and we educate them in a more thorough way in a front. Last year it was all around Teams, but before this we had gatherings and lobby meetings where we did this. So brown coffee bags and cyber attack simulations and so on, because this is becoming critical. It's critical for our success, and if we fail on this, our customers will not trust us, and we will have a big issue with rebuilding the trust.
Excellent. Excellent. Very helpful. And Yuda, same question for you. Areas you're most keen on solutions here?
I think that there's been a lot of debate over the years about preventing versus remediating. And I think that there's lots of efforts going on in the prevention field, but I was very impressed by one particular Israeli company that actually relies on deep learning rather than machine learning in terms of training the digital brain with billions of models, just like we train when we're kids to recognize a cat from a dog, and we don't look at the speck, or we don't look at the trained features. but we just, from the very first second, we can identify it. And so I think machine learning versus deep learning has some potential there. And in terms of training, yes, there has been obviously a lot of progress and realization that people are key in this combination of technologies, processes, people, etc. We worked with, again, an Israeli company to bring to Miami a cyber range, which allows the professionals to actually get hands-on training in addition to all the certification they take, but to be put in a situation where they are attacked from several angles and to be coached at the end of the day on how to do things better. So there's a lot happening. It's a fascinating field. And again, I love the field and I'm enjoying it a lot.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me start going to the audience questions here because it's quite a few. Number one question posed, who is winning, hackers or the user community? You got to come up with one of them. Jacob, let me start with you.
Well, the question is that to answer this, you need to decide what you measure success here. Okay. So from one side, I may say that, and I want to look on numbers. You know, if in 2018, ransomware globally, worldwide, was estimated about 8 billion. Last year on 2020, ransomware estimation worldwide was already 20 billion and it's ramping up. So in that sense, you can say hackers are winning because the numbers, it's clear evidence that they are winning. On the other hand, you see that still we are living, you know, we are more concerned on COVID than we are concerned from cyber attack in this case. Companies are continuing to do their activities. So I think that in the end of the day, the society, community, organization are still winning because still we are still driving cars, still flying airplanes, still ships going around the world. The moment it will stop, that means the hacker terrified us to become terrorists in a way that we are changing our behavior, our business because of the attacker. Still, we put all the cyber attack under risk and we fill the gap with insurance. So I think if you want me to select if the hacker are winning or the other community, we are winning, I think we are still in the winning because we are still able to manage the cyber risk.
It could be much worse if we didn't have the solutions we had today.
It's good that we still have talents in our side and we need to keep it like this.
Good. Good. Itzik, let me go to you. Another question here. In the past 5 years, cybersecurity spending has increased 1.5x, but data breaches have increased 2x. This lack of efficacy indicates a new approach to security is needed. Your thoughts on that?
Well, but this is, I will combine my answer to this question with the previous question you asked, okay? There is no way to stop cyber attacks. There's no way. But it doesn't mean that the bad guys are winning. And I'll give you an analogy, but it's a very learning analogy. Let's speak instead of cyber attacks, let's speak about crime, okay? There are criminals. Some people murder other people, some people steal the property of other people, etc., etc., etc. There is no way to stop crime. I mean, you can be, very naive and think that if there's good police, good court, good, I don't know what, education, etc., etc., one day there will be no crime in the world. It's not the case. Crime is part of our human nature, certain human beings, for certain human beings, and we will not fire the police, the head of the police, because there is still crime. We will fire the head of the police if crime is reaching high level, too high level. Okay? It's a different approach. We should treat cyber the same way. There's no way to stop hackers to hack into a certain target, but if the damage will not be above a certain threshold, which we don't have even to define ahead, if it will not prevent us from living the life we want to live, like time, then we will accept it. Generally speaking, governments, big enterprises, universities, academies, you mentioned everyone, all of them, we are much stronger than the criminals. In this case, the cyber hackers, okay? We have more resources, more technology, more everything. So there's no way they will win. The question is not this one, is are they going to cause us to change the way we want to live or not? And judging from this perspective, I think we are winning. Even you take, for example, the ransomware that Jacob mentioned, that the numbers are going high, and the same 2x that you mentioned now in your question, okay?
Yep.
Ransomware, for example, are relatively easy to block. I mean, it's not so sophisticated. The problem is that most of the people or organizations are not aware of it, and therefore are exposed to this type of attack. And therefore, at the end of the day, they have to decide either to be paralyzed or to pay something to free their system. Mm-hmm. But this is a problem for awareness. It's not a problem of technology or something like this. Mm-hmm. And awareness, usually the answer to awareness is education. It's not technology, it's education. It can be something like Tzvi described, education within the company, within your organization, but it should start in schools. Israel is the only country in the world, and this was one of my recommendations that the government took in 2011, only country in the world in which we still have at the end of high school something we call matriculation examination. It's an old system we took from the Germans some 100 years ago, okay? At the end of high school, you have to be examined on certain subjects which are obligatory and certain subjects that you can choose out of a very small list of subjects. Cybersecurity is one of them, which means that high schools have to teach cybersecurity. We have every year a huge cyber conference. We call it Cyber Week conference at Tel Aviv University. Last year was 19, not 2020 because of the COVID. But 2019, we had something like 10,000 people coming. There were, and everyone, I mean, we do it now for more than 10 years, there are always sessions for youngsters, I mean, high school students. They go and talk about their projects, their problems, and things like this. And this is the right solution. I mean, if you speak about awareness, should start from very young age. Now, cyber threat is a very new phenomenon, very new. I mean, 10 years or something like this. I'm speaking now about attacking civil infrastructure. It's a new one, and therefore it will take some time. But at the end of the day, there's no doubt that we will.
Excellent. Good to have a bit of the optimism at the end there. V, let me go to you because this is a question about companies. Why are so many companies still not doing the basics like zero trust networking and frameworks to limit the ability for bad actors to wreak havoc, similar to the SolarWinds case that happened recently?
I guess it's because either lack of awareness, low priority for this topic, or miscalculation of the risks. I think one of these is always the factor. I would say that lack of awareness is, in most cases, a challenge that we are seeing in big companies as well as in smaller companies, where people just have a very busy day and they don't know exactly what to expect. They are so busy that it's not on their priority. Miscalculation is, again, something that people are not aware of the risk. And when they face the risk, once you faced it, trust me, you're going to be super sensitive for educating your people and doing what is necessary, and probably investing 10 times more than what you would have invested at day one. Mm-hmm. I think if you combine all of these, that's the main issue that I see happening. But of course, there probably are some other things, pure ignorance and whatever, which the only way to fight this is by making sure that there is a protocol in the company that every manager at a certain level needs to take a few classes of cybersecurity as a mandatory activity before he enters or before he's being promoted to his next job or so on.
Yep. B, let me just ask you though, just to push back on this, with the number of incidents that have occurred, the number of people that have been affected, again, SolarWinds and Colonial Pipeline, et cetera, is it becoming inexcusable for businesses to say there was a lack of awareness?
Yes, probably yes. It's not an excuse, but it's a fact of life. People today are very busy. They don't tend to read enough, I think. We have so many emails, so much going on, that it's quite difficult to follow up on all the technology changes. Sometimes we don't follow up on the technology changes that we have in our own domain. And that's another thing that we need to do, is to appoint a cybersecurity team in the company that does everything he needs to do in order to protect us. I'm getting an email every, a few days about the need to upgrade the operating system of my iPhone. And when I asked the guys who are responsible, he said, don't ask too many questions, do it, because this is the way we're going to protect your cybersecurity on your phone. So I assume these guys know what to do, and that's another area. But it's not an excuse. A lack of awareness is not an excuse. It is really something we all have to overcome and understand, that once you are appointed to a certain job, you're responsible for everything that happens in the company, your people. Yep. If somebody schemes and takes money, pays bribe, or if there is a cyber attack.
Good. Yuda, let me ask your view. And there's obviously an ongoing dialogue now happening with social networks on how they're managing content on their platforms. And there's a drumbeat going on regulation. Now, in the US, whether or not that regulation is going to be easy, eliminating Section 230, et cetera, are we at a point on cybersecurity that regulation, whether it's in the US, whether it's Europe, whether it's elsewhere, is going to be a necessity here to really advance things?
Well, there are obviously conversations and activities going on, and in particular in the US, President Biden just came out with an executive order and some suggestions. And the things that are going to happen, I think, without too much resistance, are more frequent updates or eliminating certain gaps by edict, but also because it makes sense. So especially within the government, it's easy to say, don't use this software anymore, or make sure you have two-factor authentication, period. That's it. And do it, that sort of stuff. So that's easy. Talking about regulation, there's one area that's also a gap, but it just shows how complex the issue is and why it hasn't been addressed. And that's the accountability of the vendors. You sell a Tesla, anytime there's an accident, your stock goes down, or you have to explain why, and you have investigations by the competent authorities. You're Microsoft, you have a failure, a big failure every year, and you continue. I think obviously it's easy to point fingers, but also it's the complexity of the problem. And as most of the panelists have pointed out, it is just illusory to think that we're going to stop cybercrime. But it also is an area where a little more accountability, I think, would be good for the consumer, for the corporations, where if you read the end user licensing agreements of any software company anywhere in the world, their liability is limited. The product is as is, where is, period. You buy it or you don't buy it, and it's done. And so that's just, in my mind, a little controversial, but also it's understandable because the problem is so complex.
Yep. Itzik, let me get your view as well on this, again, on regulation, because there's a lot of questions on this. Obviously, there's kind of charges against attackers, but many of the questions here are about businesses and their responsibility. Do you believe we're at a stage where almost like the SEC will go after business executives for misrepresenting their financials and other things, that we need a new wave of regulations, rules, et cetera, that would protect shareholders, consumers, et cetera? Or, you know what, that's not going to really move the needle on change here?
This is a very complex question. Without regulation, no society can function well. We know it, okay? With too much regulation, you can strangle the society. It's a problem here, and the balance is very difficult. Usually, when we have to balance between two values, we base our rules and laws, etc., on our experience. But here, we don't gain too much experience in order to understand what we are doing. I think the salvation will come from regulation at the end of the day. It should become more from trust, building trust between the different stakeholders. And like you saw, there is a huge difference between norms of behavior and laws or regulation, which are, you cannot really bypass them, okay? We all agree that thou shalt not kill, for example, and then we have hundreds of pages of interpretations on this thou shalt not kill. Sometimes you can kill, sometimes you know, sometimes it's in between, and all this very rich literature about it. The norms are much more easier to be achieved because norms relate to basic values, basic human values, basic common wisdom, etc. And I think we should put more emphasis on norms and not on regulation. Let me say one thing. This is an approach we can do in a very small country like in Israel. I'm not sure it can be done in a very big country like the US. There is a huge difference between the two. It's a difference of scale, but 2 orders of magnitude is something that, in Israel, if you want to, for example, gain trust with the main player of critical infrastructure, you can talk with them and summon them to talk with the prime minister in one day. It cannot be done in the States.
Yep.
You see different country, states and governors and local senates, etc., etc. It cannot be done. The difference in scale is something. So at least in small countries, which are more homogeneous, like in Israel, for example, I don't believe that regulation is the answer. It should be more accepted, widely accepted norms. So, and this is also, by the way, this also holds for the international battlefield in a way, okay? It's very difficult to have agreements, treaties, etc., internationally. It's much more easy. It's easier to have accepted norms, like don't hurt the stability of cyberspace or something like this. Mm-hmm. And I think we should put more emphasis there than on laws and regulations.
Good, very, very helpful. Jacob, let me go to you. There are a variety of questions that I would call the chess game question, which is how does all this play out and how are we anticipating it? One question gets into on the use of AI. Won't the bad guys use AI basically to outsmart the protective tools that we've got? Shouldn't we be, one of the comments is Richard Horn of the EU PwC Cybersecurity Group said we need to go where we are not building and then secure. How do you think about kind of this, again, chess game, and what's the ideal play to get ahead of the game as opposed to reacting?
So this is again, the chase game here will continue forever. It will never stop. At least not. We cannot predict that it will stop. And the thing here is that in the end of the day, there are brains on both sides. When you build a security, a cybersecurity defense, you try to predict the way the attacker will act on when it will see this product. And around this, you have different approaches and technologies which help you to really build some kind of visualization of what you build. Not everything that has been built look like it is prepared. You sometimes create illusion for it so the attacker will see something else. And this is something, for example, part of the machine learning. You want that the AI will act and be part, and the majority of activity today is in the defense side and not purely on AI. It still uses the traditional old-fashioned technologies, including additional layer. We do not trust 100% purely on machine learning only. No, we still use a mix in the defense. On the attacker side, here it's different. The known attacks today using machine learning is very, very limited. I don't want to give the numbers, but you can expect that you can count them with your fingers, okay? That really use machine learning. And I think this is just experiment that leak out. It's not real hackers building attacks with machine learning. It's still not there. All what we saw until now was just some playing coming from different angles. We have some thoughts and thinking what was the sources of this. Still, the hackers are humans doing attacks. And the majority of them are using zero vulnerabilities that has been announced and taking the time for organization to patch it. This window of opportunity available for them for free. The announce of the vulnerability is there. The companies, due to the lack and different problems that they have inside, do not patch it quickly enough. This is what hacker wants. This is what every penetration wants. Exactly this window opportunity. You know how to attack it. The person, the organization is not protected. Boom, you are in. And it's already game over in that case. And this is something that will continue, especially you move to more critical infrastructure, the more sensitive they are to patch it, the more they are slow to update it. Previously, Yuda mentioned Microsoft. We become used to it, and Zvi mentioned Apple patches. We become used to it when we get the message, patch your iPhone. Well, majority of us patch it immediately. Some of us patch it in a week. But we can become used to it. When Microsoft sends on a regular basis now the patches to the entire Office and operating system, we normally today already switch it on automatically to patch our Microsoft environment. We accept it. Why? Because we want to narrow as much as possible the window that we are exposed to these attacks.
Mhm.
The rest of the attacks are something innovative, something that created in parallel, as we've seen, coming from different angles, coming from state, later from terrorism, and later from criminals. All of that together, we are seeing that this is the ranking. And this is the process of the chase which is currently playing around that.
Mhm. Good, very helpful. Let me ask one last question, then I want to go to a last broad question and a summary here. V, let me go to you. There's a question on cloud native architecture. Shouldn't that be helping more protect against cyber attacks? You had made a mention actually creates more complexity. Say a bit more on that.
Well, first of all, I have to admit that both Amazon and Azure, which I'm familiar with a little more than the others, are doing a decent work on cybersecurity, and I can only salute to their efforts. But still, as we all know, whenever there is an opportunity, the hackers are going to find the loophole to penetrate. Mm-hmm. When you put your data on your own servers on premise, you can physically lock down the server room and you can physically protect your data. If you put it on the cloud, you don't really know where your data is. And this creates both a psychology impact, but also a real threat. And that is something that I wanted to mention. Mm-hmm. We have to be aware of it, and we have to make sure that we protect our we protect our asset in the cloud, no matter who we are, and we invest in it. And if there is extra protection possible, we buy the extra protection, because once the system and the data is not in your hands, you never know who can access it and what can happen with it. But all of this doesn't guarantee anything unless you go back to what I said before. You have a protocol, you have a best practice, and sometimes you should consider splitting and saying, I'll do high capacity computing on the cloud, but I'm going to keep my secret data on-prem in a secured vault, and I'll ensure that I'm not going to play around with it. Amazon has done something which is called Snowball, I think, which is very interesting. And they also have the government cloud, which is well appreciated in the US forces, as well as in the military accounts in the US, you know, the Northrop Grummans and the Lockheed Martins and the Boeings. So I believe they are well positioned, but still there are many companies in this domain who say, you know, some of my data, I have no problem in bringing it to the cloud, but the most important data, the secret data, I'm going to keep on-prem. I'll use the cloud for high-capacity computing.
Yep, excellent, very helpful. Listen, let me ask a final question, and then I want to do a summary of what I took away from the session. And Yuda, I'm going to start with you, but we'll use it for all of them. If you were to pull out your crystal ball and go forward 10 to 20 years from now, tell me what you think the cyber environment will look like. How many attacks, how much progress, will the innovation have outpaced the risks, et cetera? Give us your crystal ball of where you think we'll be in 10 to 20 years.
I think it's very tough, and most panelists also pointed at that we can't really predict it. But I think that one encouraging sign is that the economics are in favor of the hackers, yet society, corporations, vendors, we're all making progress, and there is reason for optimism. I think that things are going to shift around. We all, we expect more technologies, we expect more creativity going on. And I think that at some point in time, one technology we didn't touch upon, quantum technology, is going to change all the rules of the game. And so I think we're just going to experience a lot of change, fast change and fast responses. And that's my prediction, really. I am sure that our other panelists have more precise predictions.
Okay, no, fair enough. So not an optimist, not a pessimist, kind of maybe you call yourself a pragmatist here about the future. Jacob, what about you?
I think, Yuda, you stole my answer. Because in 20 years from now, I'm more concerned about quantum computing and supermassive computers Because all the things that we are relying today on authentication, protecting in the cloud, the in-prem, all the stuff that we are securing, financial transaction, everything based on cryptography. And in the end of the day, in 20 years, if we do not have quantum computer by then, I would be surprised, and I think this will be a little bit personally a disappointment. And I think this will be something like will change the world dramatically. And the second technology which is going to be absolutely disruptive is the blockchain next generation, the distributed technology, all the fintech, all the stuff that we are seeing related to the stuff that we were discussing today. The way that we are distributing trust and we don't want to trust anyone, blockchain by definition brings this to table, okay? Not that I'm encouraging anyone to buy Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies, okay? I just want to emphasize the stuff. You laugh because I told you what's happening today. But in the end of the day, see what happened with this blockchain technology which enabled the crypto engine and the other stuff around that. It's changing the world. Mm-hmm. Blockchain and quantum are the future.
Good. So I'm going to call you an optimist here. Itzik, what about you?
In a way, I refuse to answer this question, and I'll explain why. You asked, what do we think will happen 20 years from now? Why did you say 20 years? It's natural, because in human life, one generation is something between 20 to 30 years. So your question is, what will be in the one generations ahead, okay? In computer technology life, and cybersecurity, as I said, is one aspect of computer technology. One generation is a year and a half. 20 years from now is 12, 13, 14 times 14 generations ahead. It's like in human life, like 300 years, like something like this. Who can say what will happen in 300 years? It's a mistake. I mean, there is something we cannot predict. And this is new ideas that will come into the minds of people tomorrow morning. New ideas, okay? This is not predictable. Usually, once they come to their mind, it takes 10 years, 15 years, 20 years to develop these ideas. Let's say someone is inventing now a new engine for cars, okay? It takes 20 years until you see it on the roads. In computer technology, it may appear 6 months from now. I mean, trying to predict it, people mentioned here quantum technology, for example. It's not even quantum technology. Quantum technology is something that we think about for 20 years now, okay? Could be new ideas, and therefore I don't think you can say. You can say, in a way, that we don't see today any alternative to computers, and therefore, computer will dominate our life also 20 years from now. I'm not so sure it is the case because what I've said before. And then, of course, cybersecurity will go with computer technology. But there's no real answer to this question.
Fair enough. V, let me ask you your view on that.
Look, Professor Ben Israel and Dr. Mendel are much smarter than me in the domain of cybersecurity, so I will follow their footsteps. All I can tell you is that as long as there are computers, there are going to be hackers, and even small organizations which are less sophisticated or considered less sophisticated will be trying to hack computers. And whenever there's going to be something new, there will be people that are trying to hack the new stuff. Because it's fun, and some people think it's fun, and others see an opportunity to make money, make a big name for themselves, and so on. So really difficult to say. I wish I had this crystal ball, and I would tell you what are the numbers in the lottery, which would benefit all of us much better.
Let me know when you do know, okay? So listen, let me do this. I always like to share what I took away from the session and give you a chance if I've missed anything or any major upgrades to let me know. I got 6 or 7 major takeaways from our discussion today. The first one is looking at the enablers for cyber attacks. There are a lot that are driving the need for focus here. And whether that be Moore's Law and the penetration of computing and IoT, et cetera, whether it's the move to the cloud, whether it's the move to a change of place that Jacob mentioned, there are a variety of things that are making the environment more difficult. It's the first point I took away. The second piece is this idea that we tend to have an offensive mindset on cyber, but some of the best solutions are defensive in nature, which have basically a mindset that says, you know what, the attacks are going to happen, but how you defend the network, cleanse the network, et cetera, is a very important focus for the future. Another piece that I took away here is this idea about protecting your privacy, business continuity, et cetera, that can become a very important source of solution. Yuda's point, which is the Michael Porter point, is be thoughtful about where attacks might occur. Magnitude of a target times ease of attack is one kind of easy, kind of dirty way to look at where an attack might occur and be thoughtful about that. Regarding solutions, a variety of solutions were highlighted here. Certainly the use of AI in a predictive way. Another one is what Itzik talked about is governance solutions, which are much more multi-stakeholder in nature, not just government, not just industry, not just civil society. It's a broad set of parties that are necessary for good governance and making sure there's alignment about critical infrastructure. This is the example about banking and making sure there's agreement there. The final point that I got here, final point or two, is the point that V raised about best practices. Don't forget that the culture, the level of awareness, the norms that Itzik raised, that these are all really important. We've been talking about a lot of technology solutions, but a lot of these are cultural inside a company. And the final question on the 10 to 20 years from now is the answer can be all the way from abstain on the question to being pragmatic to being optimistic. I think the only thing we can all agree on is there will be ongoing threats. There's going to be ongoing innovation, and there's an ongoing challenge to outpace the risks here. Did I miss anything, any upgrades before we close?
No, I think you covered it very nicely. You summarize it excellent.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, listen, let me just say a big thank you to the four of you. I've learned a huge amount in the course of 90 minutes on such a timely issue. And you've raised, excuse the pun, but you've raised the awareness about these issues. You've raised the awareness about innovation and created the right sense of concern about efforts that are needed. So I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank Yoav Suskind, who's been the leader of UCLA Anderson's alumni network in Israel. He's been super helpful in helping us identify candidates here and great speakers and getting the word out. I want to thank the Easton Center team. I want to thank the Tel Aviv University team. Everybody has helped make this a big success. And finally, thanks to all the participants and your great questions. Stay well, stay safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.